Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What is your scariest paranormal experience? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Stayed in an Airbnb in Prenzlberg, Berlin. I couldn't decide if the place was decorated to imitate 1970s East German style or whether it just hadn't been decorated in 40 years. I suspected the latter. On the first night, me and my friends all heard footsteps in the night walking across the apartment. Then the following night, we were having drinks in the kitchen, and a lamp was knocked off its table by some invisible force. Shortly afterwards, we heard 3 distinct loud knocks at the apartment door. Being the only male, I rushed to answer it. I was thinking it could be the landlord or something, but there was nobody there. When we checked the TripAdvisor reviews, several other guests had also reported similar spooky goings-on. We were camping at a very, very remote lake, and I just got the campfire going, then was setting in with my wife. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something drop right by the fire. At first I thought it was a branch, but it turned out to be part of a deer leg, about the first foot of the hoof or so. All of a sudden, I had this horrible feeling, and we jumped into the van and drove the 40 miles back to town. It was around 5 in the morning, and it was 2 days before my moving day. I was hungry, and I decided to go downstairs for something to eat. When I reached the bottom of the staircase, I heard a girl humming some song. I didn't know if it was hearing things or if I was tired, but I was definitely freaked out. I was looking in between the piles of boxes if there was someone hiding in between them, but there was nobody. One night before moving day, I headed back downstairs and heard the same girl humming. This time, it was a different tune. I was so scared. I guess this was her way of saying goodbye to me forever. When I lived in my previous house, I lived in a finished basement with a room that made you walk past the laundry room. Almost every night, when I would walk past the laundry room, I would see a tall, pale woman in a long white dress and long black hair float by the same speed I was walking, and when I get to the end of the doorframe, she would disappear into the wall. Well, once we started packing to move out, my uncle came over to help with the move. We were cleaning out the laundry room, bear with me here. I was standing inside the laundry room facing out. My uncle was outside the laundry room facing in. While we were packing, I saw my uncle turn milk white, freeze while bending down, and lock his eyes on something behind me. I asked what's wrong, and he says he saw someone walk behind me and disappear into the wall. And without a beat, I asked what they looked like. He proceeded to describe someone who looks exactly like my description I made earlier in this post. At the second, my mother comes downstairs and tells us we're ready to leave. Since then, another one of my uncles moved in, and I visited, and I haven't seen the white lady since. But the look on my uncle's face will frighten me for the rest of my life. So again, I read a lot of these stories, and I see a common trend. So many of these apparitions have a long white gown and long dark hair. Where's like the blonde ghosts or, I don't know, somebody wearing blue? I have 2 incidents. 1. I was home alone with a dog. I was downstairs watching TV. The dog was lying on the floor in front of the couch where I was sitting. I then started to hear the stairs creak like someone was walking down them. The dog jumped up and started growling. No one was in the house. I can see the staircase from where I was sitting. 2. I would occasionally hear a soft humming in my room. It happened every so often. It came from the corner of my room where a chair sat. I never thought anything of it until my sister ran out of my room screaming. This happened when I was just starting middle school in Texas, but my mom, grandmother, and myself all lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that was fairly new. However, after about a year of living there, I noticed that the faucets would turn on by themselves whenever I was alone, and that there was always something in the corner of my eye. I thought I was being paranoid, but then my mother brought a Buddhist priest into our room and had us do some form of ritual. Now, I'm by no means religious, and I consider myself to be agnostic, but I went along with it because my mother and the priest were very insistent that I sit for prayers, and that I keep a specific bracelet made of embroidery, thread, and beads on me at all times. Afterwards, the movement in the corner of my eye and the magical self-turning faucets stopped happening. Fast forward to around sophomore year of high school. Me and my family had recently moved out of our apartment and into our new house that my mom had just bought. While we were settling and having dinner after a long day of moving and unpacking, I finally asked my mom what was the priest doing at the apartment so long ago. Reason why I didn't ask till then was because my mom is Buddhist and it's not uncommon for her to do things related to the religion. She then proceeds to tell me that she called the priest there to bless us and the apartment because apparently a neighbor that was living next to us had died of a heart attack and their body was only discovered a few days later. The day the body was found was the day the priest was brought to my old apartment. Strange things were happening for about a week, and apparently in private, the priest told my mom that we are almost died due to the malicious spirit that was looming over our specific floor, as the neighbor across from us also had some strange things going on too, with which things being misplaced, faucets turning on by themselves, and the movement of a figure in the corner of her eye. Apparently, my mother was experiencing more than just the faucet turning on by itself and moving shadows. According to her, she was prompted to call the priest because she kept seeing a person always watching me in my sleep. For context, I shared a room with her and had top bunk. One instance of her seeing the ghost was around 4 days before the priest was called, and apparently she heard shifting and talking above her and assumed I was still awake and not asleep on a school night. She drew back the curtains that provided privacy for me and saw that I was knocked out in dreamland. Obviously, she was confused, but decided to go back to her bunk, but then saw a pair of feet at my staircase. She immediately skeetered to the stairs leading up to my bunk, only to find no one there, and me still sleeping peacefully. The next night, the same thing happened, only she didn't hear any sounds, nor were there mysterious feet on the stairs. But that night, when my mom was about to go to bed herself, she saw someone staring at her through the gap between the beds and the stairs to see a ghostly figure of someone in a white hospital gown and very ashen-looking skin, with long black hair peeking into my bunk. She couldn't get a good look at it as it immediately ran away and disappeared through the door. Apparently, that was the final straw for her, and the priest was called to bless the house and offer protective charms for us. And she didn't tell me because it would have scared me and would make me want to move out. We were fairly poor, so there wasn't anywhere we could move to. Needless to say, I can now never see those apartment complexes the same again, and anytime I drive down the road where they reside, I always shudder at the thought of what would have happened to us if the priest wasn't called. I don't know if this story is exaggerated or not, seeing as it's coming from my mother's mouth, and because it happened a long time ago, but regardless, it was one of the scariest revelations to ever happen to me. My girlfriend at the time and 2 other girls were living in a house that they claimed had a ghost. I moved in with them and it was almost immediately apparent that there was some sort of activity there. Things would frequently fall off the walls or shelves, and another time we woke up to a flooded kitchen, but nothing was amiss with the piping, refrigerator, or drain. Our room was in the basement and things would frequently fall off our shelves. My laundry hamper flipped itself upside down on a few occasions, and I would have dreams that I was suffocating and wake up to find my blanket wrapped around my neck. We always had the craziest dreams in that bedroom too. It was so bizarre. I've known a few people who've lived in that house since it was on the edge of campus, and they all claimed it's haunted. Most bizarre was one of the girls upstairs started sleepwalking on a nightly basis and would just clean out the fridge, eating through all the food. She installed a lock on the outside of her door and would have the other roommates lock it at night for her. Shit was bizarre, and I'm so glad not to be living there anymore. I've had quite a few that are difficult to describe. One, which didn't seem very scary as I was experiencing it, but was one where I was probably close to death, happened while I was asleep. All I remember was in a dream state, I started hearing a rhythmic pattern. 3 beats, pause, 3 more beats, pause, and so on. It progressively became louder until I woke up gasping for air, and it was my own hand hitting me on the chest, as if trying to wake me up. I moved into a newly built apartment with my best friend. There was a closet in the kitchen wall with space for a washing machine and dryer. We kept cleaning stuff and the ironing board in there. It had a folding shutter door that squealed like hell every time it was opened or closed. I can't tell you how many times we'd come out from the bedrooms and find the doors open and that stupid ironing board pulled out into the room like someone was going to start ironing any second. It was never that way when we got home from work, and there were no squeals from the door being opened once we were home. One time I found it, put everything back, played video games with my friend back in his room, came out to the living room, and the damn door was open, and the ironing board pulled back out. Ugh. Then there was my bedroom. The apartment had central air and kept nice and cool, but my room was excruciatingly hot all day and night. Some wonky pagan friend of my roommates said there was probably a demon infestation in my room. Awesome. They kept me awake and paranoid all night way too many times. The worst, though, was the time I was laying in bed during the day reading a book. I heard my roommate flush the toilet, grab his keys, and walk out the door. I even saw his shadow walk past my blinds. Like 5 minutes later, I get up and go to the bathroom, and I see him sitting in his room playing computer. I jump a foot because I thought I was alone. I said I thought he'd left, and he's looking at me weird and says he didn't go anywhere, hasn't even moved for the last hour. And I'm like, well, who the hell just walked through the house, grabbed keys, and left? He's like, no one was there. It's been totally quiet. I'm not religious, nor do I believe in the supernatural, but when your stuff starts moving around and you're hearing things that no one else does, it tends to freak you out. We didn't live there long, and that was thankfully my last and only paranormal experience. Maybe somehow the ironing board would fall down and open the doors, but somehow it doesn't make the noise. I don't know. Or, ghosts ironing. When I was 12, I was staying at my grandmother's house for the summer. They owned a small 20-acre ranch in Cortez, Colorado. One morning, she asked me if I wanted to go pick out some old horses with her. For some reason, I said no, totally out of the norm. I stayed in her bed and watched TV. When I noticed something in the dark hallway about 30 minutes after she left, it looked like an angel, but not really. Just really smoky, honestly, from what I can remember. Then suddenly the phone rang right by me, and it disappeared. I answered, thinking it was my grandmother. It wasn't. Some strange voice saying, "Is this Willie?" No one besides family called me Willie. I replied, "Who's this?" He replied, "I just witnessed your grandmother get T-boned by a semi. She told me to come pick you up. I'm on my way to bring you to the hospital." I said, "No, that's fine. My neighbors will take me." Turns out my neighbors were home, and I ran over and I went to play with those kids a lot, and the mom took me to the hospital, and my mom drove 4 hours to get me. When I saw the photos of our car, the passenger seat was not even a part of the car anymore. To this day, I feel like an angel made me stay home, or else I wouldn't be on earth anymore. I didn't believe in God till that moment, but now I definitely do. I was visiting with a friend late at night in college at her new rental house for the first time. It was just us two and her brown and white Boston Terrier Maisie. It was like 2 a.m. and I was getting ready to leave, so I picked up the couple of beer cans we had been sipping on to throw them away. I walk around the corner of the living room into the kitchen and crack open the pantry door to get the trash can. And as I open it, at the bottom of my vision, I see Maisie dart straight into the pantry from under me. I laughed, thinking she was looking for food scraps, so I call out, "No chicken for you, Maisie," as I pull open the door all the way. That's when I effing froze. Even typing it now gives me goosebumps. The pantry itself was only about 1.5 feet deep, and there was absolutely no room on the floor for a dog to enter all the way inside. There was a bunch of cans down there, and tiny trash can itself barely fit inside. It would later dawn on me that it also would be physically impossible for a dog to enter the way I saw it enter, both just by the space available to maneuver, and also for the fact it would have to phase through my legs to even get to the opening. I only had the door cracked 4 to 5 inches, and was standing directly in front of it, only barely open enough to reach my hand inside of the dropped cans in the trash. I was shocked, and chilled when I realized there was no dog inside, and I had just clear as day seen something that wasn't possible. My brain was kinda locked up, so I just stuttered out again, "Maisie?" And then my friend calls from the living room, "Maisie's in here." I silently did a 360 and studied the entire room around me. I could not find a single thing or angle that could have possibly cast some kind of reflection or any type of explanation. While admittedly it was out of the corner of my eye, I saw it clear as day. I can picture it still right now. It was a long-haired, white-looking dog that was probably a bit bigger than Maisie, the Boston, and it had a long snout, so it was definitely not the same breed. I go back and tell my friend about what I just saw, expecting her to make fun of me and not believe me. Instead, she gets a concerned look and starts describing to me that since they moved in, Maisie would randomly bark down the end of the hallway sometimes and follow something around the floor with her eyes from the couch and get all defensive and alert. May friend was put off by this, as it was clearly weird, and Maisie never used to do anything of the sort. She even said some nights she thought she had heard something that sounded like an animal moving around the house outside her room, but figured it might just be rats or squirrels in the basement or floorboards' super old house. But the real kicker was, when she first moved in, inside the bottom small kitchen drawer was a small locked wooden decorative box with the word Alfredo on it, and when first discovered, she had picked it up and shook it and said it felt or sounded like sand. So she came to the conclusion that they must have been pet ashes. Now, what kind of pet would you name Alfredo, if not a small white dog? I remember I was stone cold sober at that point of the night, as I had quit drinking hours earlier preparing to drive, and I'm not a heavy drinker to begin with. I also frequently would stay up until 3 or 4 a.m. at that time in my life, so 2 a.m. wasn't an hour where I'd be bleary-eyed or sleep-deprived, pretty normal hours for me. I know what I saw that night, and the shit still gives me the creeps to this day. I've had other paranormal experiences stemming from a childhood home that affected my entire family, but this was the first and only time I've ever actually seen something that was just straight up impossible. There was also a 10-year gap between living in the spooky house and this incident. I'm not one to see a ghost everywhere I go. This shit was and still is personally shocking for me to have experienced and recollect. This happened back in the early 2000s. I was driving down a street with some friends in the car, and we started passing this alley. I looked right just as we were a quarter of the way through, and this garbage truck was barreling down the alley at us. There was no way we could make it in time, but I jammed my foot on the accelerator anyway. I remember the headlights were so close that they flooded the car. A moment later, and we were on the other side, and the truck flew past us. I have no idea how we were not hit. None of my friends understood what had happened just either. I can't prove this, but we were going to get hit, and then it was like we teleported. I'm going to cut it short since I have work, but I'm willing to add minor details later on. I used to live in Germany on a military base. I came home from school, parents and neighbors were outside. Only other family members in there were my dog at the time. Like all good boys do, he was excited to greet me and jump up on me as I greeted him with open arms. Well, as soon as that happened, I heard the loudest blood-curdling scream from a grown-ass man right next to me, no one there. At the same time the TV turned on as this happened, my dog got startled, and I got scared, so I ran out to tell my parents what happened. For some odd reason, I told them. They just didn't respond to it for some reason. It was really weird. Not my only paranormal experience. So my school gym was built 2 decades ago. When a certain principal, Woodrow Wilson, had taken authority, I was in our gym along with a few friends. We got bored. The gym is known for being haunted. You may not believe me when I say this, but I said, beat 2 times if you want to be friends, 1 time if you want to hurt me. Next thing I know, my leg starts throbbing. My friends had left before this. We wanted to see what would happen with just me. Not only that, but one time I took a picture of myself in the school hallway. In the background, there was this ghost-like figure, and it looked as if it was chasing me. The same thing happened. They said there were no injuries to my leg. I don't believe it was a coincidence either. Huh? Okay. Is this some type of pop culture reference that I just am not getting because I'm old? Or was this posted in 1922? You tell me. I have a few, but this one is by far the scariest. So when I was like 6, I had a few childhood friends that I would hang out with a lot because our moms were friends. One night, me and my friend are playing in a toy tent in my bedroom. Everything is fine until the silhouette of a small, deformed figure appears and starts walking around the perimeter of the tent. The little effer kinda looked vaguely like Dobie, but more wrong. It slowly made its way to the door of the tent and vanished. I would have thought I made it up, but my friend swears he saw it too. No clue what it was, but I never saw anything like it again. To start, our house was built in 1936, and we bought it in 2016. I can't remember how long it was after we moved in, a couple of weeks to a couple of months, but I decided to take a nap. I was either dreaming or was half awake, half asleep. I felt more of the latter because I thought my eyes were open, but I'm not 100%, and I saw this dark figure at the end of our bed. It was strange because I remember trying to wake up or get up but couldn't. Once I did, nothing was there, but my heart was racing. Anyway, that's the only time I've seen George. Instincts tell me it's male. I kind of feel all the truly creepy ghosts are female, and I'm not getting that vibe. He's still around. He's more active in the warmer months than in winter. He likes to hang out in our finished attic. I'll be up late and hear footsteps. The attic floor is pretty squeaky, old house. Walk across the attic. Our cat will rip around upstairs in the middle of the night, so I figure he's playing with her. He likes to move stuff, which is disconcerting sometimes because it takes me by surprise. I went to feed our cat one morning, and her bowl was in a completely different room than it usually is. No one moved it, I checked. I will catch something out of the corner of my eye on the stairs leading to the attic. Things like that. Besides the first encounter, he's been a decent house spirit.